Wow, if we could only have this control in our classrooms, right? Fantastic. Well, good evening and welcome to Toms River High School North Auditorium, the Maria Ressa Auditorium, named after one of our alumni who's won the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm Mike Sitta, the superintendent of Toms River Regional Schools, and I welcome you all here tonight for a town hall discussion, and that's what this is. It's going to be a discussion, a little bit about the state of Toms River and the regionalization vote coming up in April 16th. I first want to welcome some of our Board of Education members that are joining us here tonight. We have from South Toms River, Mrs. Anna Palazzo. From Beechwood, Mrs. Melissa Morrison. From Toms River, Mrs. Kathy Egan. Also from Toms River, Mrs. Jen Howe. Interesting tonight, right? Here we are, we find ourselves together in a town hall discussion talking about important things. And I want to start off by kind of just setting the groundwork on what we hope to accomplish for those that are watching here at home tonight and those who are sitting here and have questions. And the questions are important because, you know, we're here to make an educated decision that can change the landscape of Toms River Regional Schools and our surrounding towns. So it's important that we're informed, you have the information that you need. But tonight is about getting educated. You're not here to be persuaded to do one thing or another. I am going to speak frankly about where Toms River is, how regionalization has brought itself to the doorstep of Toms River with Seaside Heights, and what a regionalization would mean if passed and what it would look like. So that's the goal tonight, and to also get into just questions and answers and help to build our FAQ that we can get out there in the next couple of weeks, because I'm sure there's some great questions in the room that we haven't even tapped yet on our flyers or our information centers. Everybody received a flyer with just some brief talking points when you walked in. If you haven't seen our all-star sit-down YouTube video of Mr. Kenny and I talking about the state of the state, you'll hear some of those things tonight. But more importantly, I'm interested to hearing the questions that you have. So without any further ado, I kind of want to just get started. And I want to build, we also have Mr. Capone from Toms River just join us, Board of Education member. I want to kind of just tell the story of where we are in the next couple of weeks. You're going to hear all about Toms River Regional Schools budget process. And there's a lot to absorb because there's a lot at stake for our kids and our community and the opportunities that they have. And not everything is tied to regionalization. So I want to kind of give an overview of where we're at, how we got here, very simply, and then talk about systematically the steps that bring us through regionalization vote in April, and then what the impact of that would be on everybody. So if you don't mind, I will begin and just talk a little bit about, you know, flatly where we're at right now. In the last 7 years with S2 and our funding, this is no surprise, and not to any education in this room for the last 10 or 15 years of everybody educating you about what has gone on in Trenton, what has gone on with the school funding formula, and how Toms River Regional Schools has been a big loser in that category. You know, over the last 7 years, we have lost $137 million in state aid. $137 million in state aid. And where does that state aid go to? It goes to our children. It goes to their educational programs. It goes to the fabric of what they do in extracurriculars. And through that time and through those 7 years, our district and our board and our prior leadership has done a fantastic job of keeping this ship together and maintaining programs for our children. So a credit to this community and to the leadership prior to me to say what's important in Toms River. And that's why I think we're very unique in this town. We have an identity of who we are, right? We know what our expectations of our children are. We know what our expectations of our staff and our administration are, and we know what kind of opportunities we want to grow for our kids as we move forward. And our motto has always been that we want to create an environment and a community where our children grow up with more opportunities than we had, because most of us, and show of hands, who went through the system here or in our town or have kids that went through? Okay, yeah, it's impressive every time you ask. You know, most of our staff, you have about 75, 80% of people that are coming back to the district to pay it forward. And that's what we really want to accomplish. We want to leave this community better than it has, better than we found it. We want to make sure that our families can continue to come back home, know that it's their lifelong home, and grow up and plant their roots here. It becomes more and more difficult and challenging when, again, cumulatively, over the last 7 years, you lose $137 million. So fast forward to last year. Last year, we had a lot of community conversations about one of the biggest cuts that we had in our budget and what that would mean for our staff and our community of about $15 million. Okay, $14.4 million was cut. And through attrition, we presented a budget. This board presented a budget, and I presented a budget that was $13.4 million short. So why did we present a budget that was $13.4 million short and not any more cuts? Because over the last 7 years, we have cut hundreds of positions. We have cut programs. We have tiered different busing and made effects to the children's schedule. And our teachers and your students cannot handle any more sacrifices when it comes to the funding that provides them the education that they need. So this administration and this board took a stance that we can't do that. And we need to find an alternate way, or the state needs to step up and figure out how they're going to fund it. So we went into the budget process last year of saying, this is going to get solved by community effort, or you're going to have to give us a loan. That was the mentality going into last year's budgetary reasons, okay? So $15 million basically short. We're holding the line on what we cut because we, by law, I have to sign a budget that meets a thorough and efficient education, right? So that's what the state says we have to provide, and I have to sign a budget every year that states we are providing that. I couldn't sign that budget unless we had another $13.4 million last year to do so. And at best, that was the worst budget we've ever presented in Toms River Regional Schools, right? All the extra surplus is gone, all the other things that you do in your homes to make sure you're comfortable and you're worried about a rainy day. 137 million over 7 years has taken all those things away from us and our ability to plan forward. Last year, we worked together in our community and our stakeholders, and we were able to overcome that $13.4 million, albeit we got what they call stabilization aid. And I think that's important that we understand some buzzwords that I throw out today. Stabilization aid. That was the aid that the governor and the Senate and the legislature gave back to the districts that lost money one time. So we got about $10 million back, 66% of the 14.4. And then we worked with our community and our governing bodies, and we were able to sell some trees next to Silver Bay that remain to be trees to this day because they were purchased with Green Acre funds. And we did that for about $4.1 million. And we were able to solve our budget problem without getting a loan. Both of those solutions to that problem were one-time expenses. So, which means this year when we start our budget process, we know that we are already at 14.4 million that we got back last year. We have to make up for again this year. Plus what we just found out we got cut, which is $2.8 million. Plus all the other things in our budget that have increased or we've had to do and put together with duct tape and bubble gum over the last 7 years to make sure our kid programs don't go away. So this year, we face a $26.5 million shortfall. Our mindset and our promise to our community remains exactly the same. Is that, I'm wrong, Mr. Doring, or are you just really clearing your throat? All right. That's the cue, like you're giving the wrong number from the BA. All right. So, and I don't mean to be doom and gloom, because today's conversation isn't about to be depressing about numbers. I'm just trying to paint a picture of how we got here. All right. More importantly, I'd like to celebrate the resolve that we have in our community, because I look around at all the things that we have accomplished together, our parents, our teachers, our students, our planning, our moving forward, the opportunities that we've had in the classroom over those same 7 years, at least in the last 2, that we've been here together working towards these goals. We've added pre-vocational programs. We've had more opportunities in the high school. We have figured out, because of the integrity, tenacity, and resolve of our community, how to move forward and provide these opportunities like no other district can, because of the people sitting in this room and in the greater part of our regional school district. And that is something you to be extremely proud of. One that I know that we beam about every day when we walk into the schools and we see the kids and what they're doing. What our teachers are doing with your children and what your children are getting out of their education is still second to none, and this is still the greatest place on earth to live. So the doom and gloom is the doom and gloom, but nobody can take away the human spirit and the resolve that we have in this community. So as we approach a $26.5 million problem this year, if they continue to get resolved with stabilization aid or loan things, the next year's problem only becomes 50 million and then 100 million. And you kind of see the pattern, you know? And at some point, somebody's going to come in here and say, well, we can't give you a loan. You're going to have to cut something else. And at that point, you know, just to give you one more bit of doom and gloom, do you know what $26.5 million looks like if we cut it from the budget, or we cut it from our schools? Let's forget the budget. We cut it from our kids. That's over 400 more staff off of the hundreds that we've already cut. That is almost every non-mandated program in the budget, meaning like another 20% reduction in all of our expenses. No sports, no extracurricular, no play, no AP classes, no academy, none of those things that give you guys the opportunities that you need, and we still wouldn't reach $26.5 million. So there is no way that anybody sitting over there, or any on our administrative team, or anybody in this room is going to sign a budget that says we're cutting $26.5 million or one more penny in Toms River for that sake. Because, and the Department of the Education recognizes we are in this situation. They recognize it, and they think we're a good candidate for a loan, which is very nice of them. Considering, you know, we watched the governor's presentation of fully funding a budget, and first time ever funding the full school funding formula to the tune of $900+ million added to the budget, when it truly was $1 billion, $1.1 billion added, because the 107 on top of the 900 he added were from all the 154 S2 losers. So they took the money back again from us and moved it over here to the right column. You know, so, and I think I read somewhere today or yesterday that, you know, we're fully funding a high school in one of the counties in New Jersey for the tune of the taxpayers, meaning all of us, $352 million for a new high school. Again, you cleared your throat. I make Mr. Doring nervous when we talk about these numbers. You all right? I'm pretty accurate, right? 352 million.
Dead on.
Dead on. You know, and it angers us. And it makes you want to do irrational things when you talk to these people, as we've been traveling around the state the last couple of days, talking to different senators around the state, trying to fix our budget problem and present different solutions and ideas. Because what we need is a sustainable solution to our budget. We don't have a spending problem. We are the lowest spending district in the state of New Jersey. The lowest spending. That's not a good thing. That means we spend the least amount of money on our kids' education than any other district in the state of New Jersey, all 587 of them. That is not something we are proud of, but is something that we've historically been, because we've been very prudent with our taxpayers and our operations as we move forward. So over the last 20 years, as our enrollment has increased, we have decreased staff along with it organically to make sure that we're providing our taxpayers with the most efficient budget we possibly could. You know, hindsight, you're looking in the mirror, you know, with opportunities to, you know, and I'm not saying this because I want to, but, you know, if there was small tax increases over the last 20 years along the way, you know, we wouldn't be sitting here. So you have that balance of, you didn't tax enough, but yet we're not going to fund you. In fact, we're going to take 59% of your aid away from you over the last 7 years. And then critics would say that, well, you've lost 1,300 students in the last 7 years. You know, you have 3 high schools, 3 middle schools, and 12 elementary schools. Don't you have a lot of room in your classes in your schools? I don't know, guys. Who's teacher in this building? You guys, extra room, extra seats in your classrooms? No. And let me tell you why. Okay, because there's a reason for that. The reason is, you know, over the 1,300 students that we've lost over the last 7 years, and believe me, we've actually leveled off and we're starting to grow again, as our population is like 14,700 and change right now. 1,300 students at an average of 30 students per class is roughly like 40-something classrooms that we've collapsed over time through attrition with the teachers that goes into the hundreds of staff that we have reduced. But in that same time period, what the formula and what we are trying to make everybody in Trenton understand is that's not the only key to enrollment. Because over the last same time period, our special education number has increased 20%. The budgetary line item for special education has increased 45.6%. The actual number, it has increased during that same time, we've lost $137 million, is $17.6 million more because our kids need it. And we provide the best opportunity in those classrooms for our kids, and they deserve to get that education in their hometown in Toms River. But all the supports that go along with it, as you're losing 137, that's not accounted for. But if you divide that percentage, or multiply, I should say, by the 9 kids that would be capped in every one of those classrooms, we're well over the 45 classrooms that we collapsed, right? So we've added classrooms as our enrollment has gone down because the shifts in our demographic and student needs. Are you guys with me on that? I know you are, because you're much smarter than the people sitting in Trenton. So this is the story that we tell. And then you have solutions, right? Your solutions are that all the hard work we're all doing, panhandling, talking, or telling our story, beg, borrowing, and pleading, selling my first and second born. They're not worth it anymore. They're 17 and 21. They can have them. Whatever it takes to get our dollars back in Toms River is what we're doing. So the first solution would be that gets recalled, and somebody figures out, and I can tell you they're listening. I just testified last Thursday. Everybody finally understands after 7 years we have a problem. It doesn't work. Finally. But let's solve the problem. So we're helping to work with solutions, because what we want, again, is sustainable revenue, not revenue that you give me in 1 year. If you give me the $26.5 million this year, whether it be in a loan or in a stabilization aid, I'm going to say that buzzword again, right? Next year, my problem starts at 26.5 million and grows from there. Probably looking at a $50 million problem next year, if that is the solution this year. Okay? The second solution, which is a very realistic one, is the loan. You know, the State Department of Education realizes we are the lowest spending. Our kids, we are going to provide you guys with the same opportunities we've all had. We are not cutting any programs. If we can add them through creativity and community connections, we will continue to do so. But we're putting all our energy forward, not backwards. So if we ended up getting a loan, that would fall on the taxpayers to repay, and it would also come with a fiscal monitor. A state fiscal monitor then would be able to make the decisions, not Mr. Sitta and the Board of Education, on how to spend those dollars. Now, we're extremely confident on how efficient that we are, that a state fiscal monitor would realize you can't do it any cheaper because nobody does, and we need more money, not less. But you give up that control, and you don't have to look further than Lakewood and Jackson, who have been getting these loans over the last couple of years, to see how that is working out. But again, you know, today that is the background of where we are at. The third step, and it's not even a solution, it really is separate than our budgetary problems, is regionalization. Because this happened separate from our budgetary problems, an opportunity to regionalize. And I want to tell the story of that a little bit to you, to give you that information. And this is really what we're here to talk about. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for our kids? What does it mean for those kids? How does that affect the homeowner in Toms River and Beechwood and South Toms River and Pine Beach? You know, what are those things, and how does it impact us? That's why we're here to learn, because on April 16th, this community and Seaside Heights community is going to be asked to make a decision on what's best for kids. And that's the decision that should be made. What's best for kids? Every decision that we make, that I recommend, goes in a recipe with 3 simple items. Is it good for children? Does it provide the supports to our staff to give them what's good for children? And number 3, how does that benefit our taxpayers, and our taxpayers benefiting from the decisions that I make? In that order. So if it doesn't pass the first step, we don't move on to the second step. Doesn't pass second, we don't go to the third. Okay? Not everybody's going to agree with every decision we make. Obviously, we run a very large district, and we have a lot of decisions to make. But that's how I make them. When regionalization came about, it came about a year and a half before I was superintendent, and it started in Seaside Heights. Why did it start in Seaside Heights? It started in Seaside Heights because Seaside Heights have been receiving transitional aid or dollars from Superstorm Sandy and the fires on the boardwalk to rebuild their town. And part of their requirement to take those state dollars and that aid that they were receiving is to enter into studies to see if they can save money with different governmental agencies by doing shared services and such. Guys with me? Right. So they went into a study, and the first study that was signed and agreed to by our Board of Education, because we're the closest regional district to Toms River, was what they call a send-receive study, which is different than regionalization. How so? Well, send-receive would have taken all the children and the staff from Seaside Heights and moved them to Toms River from Hugh J. Boyd, pre-K through grade 6, okay? And in doing so, and they would still remain at Central Regional grades 7 through 12. In doing so, they would pay a per pupil tuition cost to the Toms River Regional School Districts and our taxpayers to fund those students to come to Toms River. Okay? And the study said that Seaside Heights would benefit about $1.5 million to $2 million by doing this, and Toms River would benefit about $500,000 per year by doing a send-receive study, or agreeing to a send-receive. But remember what I just told you as far as my recipe goes, right? Is it good for kids? Does it support our staff? And how does it affect the taxpayer? We didn't have to get past the first one, because I can't on earth know that why it would be a good idea to bring children to Toms River Regional Schools to go to two separate schools, and then one third of their way in a middle school, get on a bus after already starting their connections with their peers in after sixth grade, and get on a bus an extra hour and 10 minutes to go to Central Regional to finish out their educational career. You're disrupting those students and you're disrupting our students. It's not good for children, therefore rejected. That was the first month of me being superintendent here. We got that study. We brought it to the board. We all agreed. It was not good for kids. We did not accept it. We did not present that to the taxpayers. So part of their feasibility study, the second requirement was to go back to the drawing board and see what regionalization would look like between Seaside Heights and Toms River Regional Schools. So using the same formula, last November, we finally got the final feasibility study from the people, the outside agency doing the study for Seaside Heights, and it presented to us. And at the time, the plan was, and hopefully everybody in the room knows now, and we're going to explain that in a second, that the Hugh J. Boyd School will remain open for up to the next 5 years, but I'll talk about that in a second. But when the study came, the Hugh J. Boyd School wasn't part of the study. The students would come directly to Toms River Regional Schools. I chose Eastover because we have the 6 classrooms for the grade levels and availability in that school to house them. And the first question when we asked, and we looked through the study and we asked the other professionals and we looked around and it was, is it good for kids? Well, yes, in our opinion, in my opinion, in the study's opinion. You have continuity of education for these children for the first time, pre-K through 12th grade. We know, I know, very biasly, that nobody can provide the opportunity for children like Toms River Regional Schools can, and their staff, with the love and the compassion that we can support. With a larger district, we have larger resources. I know I just took you through the doom and gloom of who we are and what we are, but we manage, and we do a darn good job of taking care of our children. So good for kids? Yes. Continuity of education for kids. They don't have to get on the bus an hour and a half to go to Central Region. They get to come 10 or 15 minutes to Intermediate East, then High School East. Yes, check, check. What about our staff? Number 2 is, how does that benefit our staff? Well, 2 and 3 go kind of hand in hand. Number 2, originally in the study, along with the Seaside Heights staff becoming part of our family in Toms River Regional Schools, the majority of them would end up in Eastover Elementary with their children, which would reduce class size because we would add sections for those children. So our intermediate or Eastover Elementary School classes that have kindergarten classes at 24 and 25 and upper grades at 29 and 30 would see a reduction about 2 to 3 students per class with the adding of these sessions, which means more supports for our kids, more supports for our teachers, in my opinion. Check. We move that forward. So what about the taxpayer? Are we doing this efficiently? Is it going to cost the taxpayer dollars, us dollars, to do this endeavor? And the answer to that is no. And this is where I hope we get in good Q&A in a little bit, because we're going to have a financial discussion right now. And I want you to know that this regionalization isn't about money. It's about the money that supports all of the kids in the regional school district, because the entire tax levy, just like the entire tax levy of Beechwood and South Toms River and Toms River, goes to the education of our kids, the entire tax levy of Seaside Heights would come to Toms River Regional Schools in the upwards of over $7 million a year, every year, as it grows, every year, forever. Sustainable revenue, right? Sustainable revenue. So the feasibility study shows that the taxpayers can benefit in the first 10 years in Seaside Heights by the tune of about $9 million in savings. I don't have the exact numbers, but Bill, in Toms River, it's about 35 million. in savings. And when I say savings, okay, what I mean is dollars that are being spent on our kids that you don't have to spend. Okay? You're not getting a refund check, but we are shorted $137 million, and these are dollars that go to our kids for programs, not to Mr. Sitta, not to our staff, for programs. Okay? That's where they go. So that $7-something million a year, you want to give me Beechwood?
2 million.
2 million. Pine Beach?
680,000.
680,000.
480,000 for South Toms River.
And $480,000 for South Toms River in savings, educational savings, kind of like you go to the food market, right? And you ring up your bill and you have $300 worth of food and you're ready to bring it home, but you have $50 worth of coupons. You still get $300 worth of food, but you pay $250. You guys with me? Right. So we're not adding to the taxpayer burden. We have savings to the community for our kids. And that's clear. And, you know, because when you guys read this long question on April 16th, it's going to have verbiage in it. And you're like, what does this mean? Toms River is going to save tens of millions of dollars. That's what I mean. Toms River will benefit tens of millions of dollars for regionalization, not at the expense of our taxpayers. You guys with me on that one? All right, good. So is it good for our taxpayers? In our opinion, yes. This is still our community decision. We still had to go through hoops to get it to the point to make sure we can get to a vote this year. And I want to talk to why it was important to get to a vote this year instead of next year. Because in Toms River, we've been paying attention to a bill that affected S2 districts that was signed into law in August called S3950. That was a law that Governor Murphy signed in August of this past year in 2023. And he signed it because a bill was created to help a district like Freehold Regional, who was losing courtesy busing, to get some state aid back that it lost during S2. So the bill read, and as we read it over the summer, it wasn't written, this is for Freehold Regional, it was written as any school district that meets these criteria, and those criteria are, number one, are you under adequacy? There's another buzzword for us as we read the ballot question and things. Adequacy. What's adequacy? Well, adequacy is the number, the dollar amount that the State Department of Education and the SFRA, which is the formula, says we should be spending on our children every year. You know how much under adequacy Toms River Regional Schools is? $91 million a year under what the state says we should be spending. I digress. So yes, we meet that criteria. Second is, do you spend more than less than 50% of the state average of cost per pupil? Now, I already told you nobody spends worse on kids than we do in Toms River. So we check for the next two. Yes, for administrative cost. Yes, for cost per pupil. And then you look at the last criteria. You have to be a K-12 regional school district. Fantastic. What does that mean? What did I win? Pull the curtain open. What's behind curtain number one? Well, you won 2 years of your aid given back to you if you meet all those criteria. But hold on, wait a minute. Read the small print. You have to be a district of at least 5 municipalities and be a regional district K-12. So what does that mean? That means we didn't qualify for S3950. Guess who did? Freehold. That's interactive, very good. Freehold Regional, the only district in the state who qualified. And if they moved it to 4 municipalities, 2 districts would have qualified, Toms River and Seaside. I'm sorry, Freehold. So What else would regionalization do for Toms River in the short term? In the short term, it would, for the foreseeable future, and it's still out for debate, but at least for the next couple years, give us back the $14.4 million that we lost a year ago and the 2.8. Okay? And I already told you we were $26.5 million short. So all these things go a long way of sustainably fixing our revenue problem without relying on our friends making the decisions in Trenton on what they're going to do to the formula next. So with that being said, on those two things, and again, those are facts. I'm not trying to persuade you to make a decision for what's best for our community. That's up to our community. I'm giving you the facts. Those are the facts. We have decided to keep the Hugh J. Boyd School open, and we were able to work with the mayor and the school to do so for a minimum of 2 years, a maximum of 5 years, or until enrollment goes under 125 students. Okay? Which I think is better for kids. Do I think it's still good for kids if they came to Eastover? I absolutely do. But I couldn't imagine doing that to one of our communities either. So working with that, it's a little more expensive to keep the school open, but it's better for kids in the short term, and our taxpayers and our teachers and our students still economically benefit. All right? So with all that long-windedness, I've talked for about 32 minutes. I want to kind of open it up. You raise your hand if you got a question about anything and everything, and I'll be happy to answer them. Anybody got any questions? Will somebody come around with a microphone? Certainly. Great. Thank you, Real.
Testing. Just want to make sure it works. I'll just give your name and then your question.
All right, guys. So my name's Brialis. You may have heard of me during the board meetings, and I just want to ask if you could repeat the stipulations that were outlined in S3950.
Certainly.
I don't know if I said that part right.
No, you said it correctly. There is a bunch. We qualify for them all with the exception of the 5 municipalities in a K-12 district. But the first one being you have to be under adequacy, which means you have to spend less than what the state says you have to spend on education. You also have to spend, there's a state average, and in our state it's $17,900 and something per pupil. We spend $13,900 per something per pupil. Oh wait, that's
Mr. Sid, I think it also speaks to administrative costs being
I didn't get to that one yet.
15%. Okay. Just making sure we don't miss it.
all right. I got it.
Also, I had a frog in my
All
throat.
right. If I'm not to the penny, he gets very nervous. But understand. So you have to be 15% more or less. It's always a tongue twister for me. Lower than the average, 15% lower. You have to be greater than 15% lower than the state average on both cost per pupil and administrative cost per pupil, which we are. All right. Anything else? Oh, the back, Ms. Whitaker. I can come to you.
Oh, Mr. Sitta?
Yes. Oh, right here. I'm sorry. I'll go to you.
Hi. My question is regarding High School East. All these kids are going to be going to Eastover. The high school would be East.
Mhm.
What happens then? With the additional classrooms, the teachers, a lot of things have already been cut. So
So I think to put things to scale, you're looking at, first of all, during the transition, and that's a great question, because the children that are at Central Regional now, we don't want to ruin their educational process. So if they already started at Central Regional, 9th grade, 10th grade, or 11th grade, they can stay if they choose, and we would pay tuition back to Central Regional. Okay? If they were in 7th grade, they can stay to choose to finish 8th grade. But when you leave the building, that's when you have to transition over to the new building. But to put things on scale, I mean, you're you're less than 300 students total in Seaside Heights. You are looking at between like 180 and 190 students pre-K through sixth grade. So you're talking about like 27 or less students per grade level in the high school, which won't change a thing. All right? Go ahead.
Krista Whitaker. Oops, sorry.
Hi, Mrs. Whitaker.
Hello. A few things real quick. So back in January, I believe, I'm going to quote the numbers you used in January and not tonight, only because I have them written down and I can remember them that way.
Sure.
So you had described the increase in special education at 234%, and for the ESL rise at 684%.
Correct.
Okay. So my one biggest concern is the fact that according to Mary Robinson Cohen, who was the consultant who led the study, she stated that in all state testing, unfortunately, the children were lagging behind. There were no categories where the children were advanced, proficient, and in most categories, they were minimally proficient. The children were mainly below proficiency, coming from Seaside,
QJ Boyd. Yep.
QJ Boyd. Now, obviously, being a parent of special ed children,
Mhm.
obviously these kids are going to require needs that, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this district really isn't situated to accommodate some of them, most of them. And that shows just in the fact of the number of students that we have placed in out of district placement. Have we looked into this study in regards to how many more children we may be sending out for education since we can't provide for them?
Yes. And I don't think we would have to send out any students from Seaside Heights that are currently, if they're currently in Seaside Heights, they would not have to go out of district. First of all, and in the first 5 years in Hugh J. Boyd, they would remain at Hugh J. Boyd with the services they currently have. But just to give the disparity of the 230 something percent you just quoted for me and 34%, that was a year average. When I did 20, that was 7-year average. So it dropped over the 7 years, but the last couple of years it skyrocketed a lot. You know, just like our ESL population over the 7 years is 343% growth. Over the last 2 years, it's 680%, I believe.
Okay, now talking about the ESL students, I've spoken to a number of teachers here in district in which that they don't even have equipment in their classroom for these ESL students, that once they get their pull-out resource, they come back to class, and the teachers hope that those who are a little more proficient in the English language can help keep these other kids that are not on track to their education. So I know we spent a lot of money on equipment, but based on, I can tell you, 9 different teachers throughout our district, we don't have that equipment in the classroom. So how are we going to be able to advance these ESL students without equipment? And what's that going to cost us?
Well, the cost is built into the feasibility study. So the cost of the education is the cost of the education. There is still breakage for Toms River when it comes to being able to reallocate those numbers across the plethora that happened in Toms River. I don't know what teachers give you your data or where you get your information from, but I could tell you that the ESL programs in Toms River Regional Schools are fantastic. They are growing. We've invested in them, and we did so by reallocating our needs. So there is no question in my mind that we'll be able to benefit and educate the ESL students coming from Hugh J. Boyd.
Now, what is going to be the cost of bringing translators to meetings for the district?
None.
Obviously, we had a translator at the January meeting.
Mrs. Whitaker.
So the parent, I'm looking
it's
at
okay.
when these parents start coming to meetings or even at the back to school nights, are we looking at investments into getting translators so that we can communicate with these parents and these families?
No, we already have them. I mean, look around our room, look around our district. We are, we are not a community who we were 10 years ago demographically. We are 41% minority population in this district. 29% of the 41% one minority population is Hispanic. We provide those supports right now. We are adjusting and reallocating and growing to those needs. But we're talking about 15 kids per classroom, per grade level.
Okay. And then my last thing, and then I'll hand back the mic. Back in January, you promised these families busing to and from all morning programs, after school sports, and for the families to be able to come to the school for these events and for meetings.
Well, what I promised, Mrs. Whitaker, had nothing to do with sports. I didn't say anything about sports. What I talked about was, first and foremost, the concerns of the immediate removal of Seaside Heights Hugh J. Boyd and the transition to Eastover Elementary School, and those parents not be able to get to back to school nights as such. All the programs that we provide before and after school program busing for in Toms River would be allocated to those students in Seaside Heights. What I offered were back to school nights, important nights for parents to provide community busing, which I would do for any neighborhood if there was a need, because every one of our districts has a community school now. So if that was removed from Seaside Heights and they were part of our regional district, that was the offer, to be humane, to say we could do that for our parents. But we didn't talk about sports.
Your words on that, at that night, on that meeting is that, hold on, let me just read back. For all families of Seaside Heights, that if this merger goes through, that transportation would be provided to the students for all morning and afternoon programs, including clubs, sports, and events, as well as the parents for meetings and events. That's an easy one.
Yeah, what I think just summed up what I just said. So, I mean, I'm not going to go back on it. I think, you know, that's your interpretation of what I just said is before, and what we provide before and after school busing for now would be provided there. And for those parents on nights like back to school or conferences, we would have a bus for them. That's what I offered.
Okay, I just want a clarification so that way everybody hears.
Sure.
Because what you said at that meeting is now different than what you're saying tonight.
Okay. Anybody else?
Say your name.
All right. Yes, thank you. Kathy Fulcomer, 356 Roberts Avenue, South Seaside Park. My question is actually, who makes the decision whether Hugh J. Boyd will be open in September for the students, assuming that even that the vote is in the affirmative for the regionalization?
If it's in the affirmative, it's open in September.
It will be open.
1000%.
Because I had conflicting information this morning from the Hugh J. Boyd Board of Ed.
No, I mean,
So,
first of
so-
all, if it passes, Hugh J. Boyd and Seaside Education is Toms River Regional Schools education.
right,
So that decision would be 100% our administration along with our board.
that, so then my question is, what happens to the Seaside Heights Board of Ed? Do you have plans for a representative? How does that work?
Yeah,
How do you intend on?
They would be one member that has to come from Seaside Heights Board of Education that gets appointed, I believe, by the county superintendent until the general election to be part of our Board of Education.
Okay, then my other question is, who then, then assuming that Toms River
Mhm.
will control Hugh J. Boyd building, campus, and so forth. In other words, who owns the building, controls it, makes decisions about it?
Toms River Regional Schools.
Okay. Is there if you decide that in the 5-year period, if Seaside Heights falls below the 125, then what happens to the building?
Then what happens to the building?
Yeah.
The building closes, there'll be an agreement to give the building back to the municipality.
Oh, I see. So, yeah, then it goes back to the municipality
Yes.
if the enrollment falls
If
down.
correct.
Okay. I think that's all then. Thank you.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Good questions. And we'll all put those in our FAQ so they're up for everybody. We got a couple more? Sure.
Yes, I actually have two questions.
Sure.
One, I was curious if we do absorb Seaside into Toms River Regional School District, are we also absorbing any kind of debt that they may have outstanding? Do they have any loans outstanding? Or things like
No,
my
I
second
didn't get a
question.
grunt on that. I just got a no.
My second question, if we do take them on and we qualify for this law 3590,
3950. Yep.
3950, and maybe I'm missing a piece of the math puzzle here, but you're saying we would get back the 14 point some odd million from the last cut and the 2.8. So
Right.
in my head, I'm figuring that's about 18 million, and you're saying there's a $26 million shortfall. So
Correct.
that I'm still seeing like a 10 million or so gap.
Yep.
So is there still going to be a budget gap even if we take on Seaside, and what is the plan for resolving that gap?
Sure. No, that's a great question. And I'm glad you asked it because absolutely there is going to be some kind of gap in the short term. Again, regionalization, that's why I said it's two separate issues. I really wanted to take a time to educate our community on our budgetary issues along with those issues. But in the short term, until those dollars sustainably come through, every year that they come through and expenses get absorbed by Toms River Regional Schools, the cost to do those things becomes less. Okay. So we would shorten that gap over time, but in the immediate, there still would be, which is why I've spent the last 4 days in Trenton and all over the place working with superintendents from S2, talking about things that could really help and benefit us, like creating bills that attack the special education increase in categorical aid. And there's a lot of other opportunities out there to close that. So we have this issue whether we get regionalization or not, right? So that's why I said it's really two separate things. So it's not the immediate cure-all, but certainly from a finance position, 10, 15, 20 years, the investment, the return on investment of a regionalization with the Seaside Heights is extreme for the taxpayers of Toms River. You got a question? Good. Just say your name, bud.
If things were to get cut, what would get cut first?
We're not cutting anything.
All right.
There you go. Good question. Good question.
Hi, Mr. Sitta.
Hi.
I'm trying to understand this. So if once it goes to vote, if it passes through Toms River, does Seaside also have to pass for
Yes.
the merger to go through?
Yes, it does. Two
Okay.
separate votes. The regional school district majority and the Seaside Heights Borough majority.
Okay.
If one of those things don't pass it, there is no regionalization.
Now in Seaside, are they all walkers or is there a bus that we would then acquire?
No, they're
Okay.
walkers. At
So
UJ Point.
it would be our buses going like the way they go over to Ortley and Normandy
Yeah,
Beach?
we send buses past that school further north onto the Barrier Island every day.
Right. So those kids would get on that bus, except for elementary would be a different.
Yeah,
bus.
we've already figured into the bus routes in our study on what it would cost Toms River to bus middle and high school students.
Okay. And one last question.
Mm-hmm.
In high school, like you might not have this vision right now, but when they hit high school, so say they would go to high school east, but
Mhm.
the Seaside kids maybe get into the North or the South Academy
Yeah, they're part of Toms River Regional Schools.
and they would be bussed over to.
Yeah, I mean, we've accomplished that in other ways by different hubs, different buildings, based on, that's looked a little different almost every year that we've had to accomplish it, and we're still trying to get it right.
Right.
But yeah, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Mrs. Howe. Mrs. Howe.
Hi. I just want to say really quick, I don't know how many years ago it was because when I think that my oldest son will be 24, I wanted to die that he's that old. But we actually lived in Seaside Park when Seaside Park School closed and they did the send receive with Tom's River for the K through 6, and then 7th through 12th grade stayed in Central, and it was awful. It was awful for the families. It was awful for the kids. The teachers came to Tom's River, and they all are, from what I know, they were all very excited. They're all still, if they're still in the district, happy. But when Mr. Sitta first had said they want to do a send receive, I said right away, I will always vote no. I will never vote for that because what happened was, and I watched it, my son was a tuition student there because we had lived in Seaside Park, moved. I kept him there because I was coddling him. But anyway, we kept him there. But then they closed the school anyway, and he went to Washington Street and graduated South and did amazing. But I watched families where they had K through 5 go to Washington Street. And then in 6th grade, they went to Intermediate East. And then in 7th grade, they had to go to Central. And these poor kids had absolutely no continuity of education. Think of how awful middle school is if you remember middle school. I do. It wasn't my favorite. But imagine being a 6th grader and you have to get used to being in a new school and being the youngest. And then in 7th grade, you have to go to a new school and be the youngest. And now you don't know anybody because you already really are secluded when you live over on the Barrier Island anyway. And then to go into 2 huge school districts 2 years in a row as a middle schooler, it was awful to watch. I still have friends that, even in Seaside Parks now still, they can go to Washington Street or Seaside Heights or Lavalette. And what most of the parents do is send them to Lavalette and then pay tuition if they can afford it for 7th and 8th grade. But then their kids in 9th grade go to Central and everyone else in Lavalette goes to Point. So it doesn't work that way. So when it was introduced this way, and I had said right away, I will never vote for this if this is how we're going to do it. But then when it switched to K through 12, I still have 5 kids in the district and 1 graduated, and I think this is a phenomenal district. And I know those kids will be so happy, especially if they're in high school, their parents, as a parent, has to drive kids around. I'm sure most of you know how wonderful that is. But Seaside Heights to Central is a lot further than Seaside Heights to High School East. So I feel like Mr. Sitta did what he always does, is he does students first, and that scenario just was not going to work for the students in Seaside Heights. So I was very happy that even though it would have been some money for us, it wouldn't have been right for the kids. So I just want everyone says this is all about money. This is all about money. It's never all about money with Mr. Sitta and this administration ever. It's always about the students, and that's why we didn't even really talk about a send receive, because it wasn't good for the students of Seaside Heights. So I just want you to know, as a parent that went through that and how awful it was, this is such a better plan, and it's so great for the students there to be able to be a part of the Toms River School District, because I know everyone in this room, or I'm going to say 99%, I'm hoping it's 100%, are happy with the teachers in our district and how much that our administration cares and loves our kids, and we do so much with so little. And I just hope Trenton, they agree with everything Bill and Mike says. And just one more thing, and then I'll stop talking, is they say they have to send somebody in to monitor our money, but don't forget that Mr. Doring and Wendy Saxon is sitting right here. They do our budget. They win awards from Trenton every year at how amazing they are at our budget. So they're going to send somebody in and say, hey, amazing guy with all these trophies, an amazing woman with all these trophies that were given by us to you for running this amazing budget. We're going to come in and see what you're not doing right that we already looked at and gave you an award for. So just remember, that this is the nonsense that we've been dealing with for all these years as board members. It's so frustrating. But when something like this comes up, it's a good thing. And I hope people do their research for it and know that the kids in Seaside Heights are not going to be shuffled around like the kids in Seaside Park have been for the past, like I said, I don't remember how many years ago it was, but that many years. So that's all.
Thank you, Mrs. Howe. And disclaimer, we are not saying you should do one thing or another. Anybody else? Nope, we got another question up here.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
What was it ever looked at prior to 2012 under Mr. Ritako, we had a shared agreement with Hugh J. Boyd.
Yeah.
Did it?
So that's shared send receive. I mean, that's a
That's what-
similar, no, it's a similar circumstance, but really what happened there, it's completely different, honestly. But that shared agreement would, Seaside Heights Board of Education still maintains, and I don't know, back then, I think they did it for free, right? The BA and Mr. Ritako back in 2012, the shared cert, or did they get paid as a nominal fee? Like another one of the reasons why I didn't agree to a send receive is the only one who would benefit it would have been myself and the BA, because we would have got a stipend to do those two jobs. But there's still no continuity for kids in that scenario, because you're getting a Toms River education in our curriculum and our investment through 6th grade, and our model just doesn't fit that model. So that wouldn't pass our first kind of criteria. Is it good for kids? I mean, if that's how the community in Seaside Heights feels, then they shouldn't change.
All right, my second question is, Hugh J. Boyd has a universal pre-K with almost 45 children in it.
Correct.
They're going to lose that education if they come to Toms River, because you don't have that.
No, those kids aren't going to lose their pre-K. We will have room in their pre-K for those children. We will also have the opportunity to make sure that we are set up for universal pre-K for September as well. So that's something that is already in the works in Toms River. What we're waiting for is some kind of sustainable revenue in our district to move those things forward. A yes vote in April would give us the ability to do that. So pre-K would continue in Seaside Heights for those building and those children, and hopefully expand to all of Toms River Regional Schools. Thank you. Great questions.
Hi, I'm a preschool teacher. So speaking of pre-K, I'm just thinking of the kids that we have now and the kids that will be coming in. And, you said a lot of them are ESL learners, and we currently don't have ESL for preschool.
Right.
And I think it's really important that we do.
That's a good point.
Throw that out there.
No, I'm glad you brought it up, but certainly, I mean, as we do our needs assessment every year, certainly with the increase, 343% increase over the last 7 years in ESL population, and seeing what we just got in the last 24 months in our district, part of the reallocation, when I say reallocation, we have 30 retirements, instead of replacing this 2nd grade teacher position over here, we need 2 ESL teachers over there, so that's already in the works.
Okay.
Certainly. Well, it's 7 o'clock. You guys are troopers, and we certainly encourage more questions. So if you have them and you want to reach out to me via email, we're also going to post some of these questions on FAQs on our website. This is also live streamed tonight for you to watch back in case you have other questions. But again, I really appreciate you coming out and asking the tough questions. April 16th, 1:30 to 8 p.m. We will have a half day that day. So school is not interrupted, and we don't have to do remote. And we will provide vocational busing for the PM folks. Thank you.